Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. I think it's been a couple of weeks since we've done one of these streams. But it's good to see everybody joining us. I hope you're all doing well. It's a bit crazy at the minute in the world, so let's concentrate on our little niche that we have in this teacup corner of the internet where we discuss all things predatorial and lawn related. So, as much as we've been kind of going over... we've been doing the chat log and talking about a couple of other issues. I thought I'd try and do something a little bit differently this week and discuss something which doesn't really get talked about that much. But before, there is something really important that I've got to bring up and a couple of serious questions I've got to ask one of our guests before we get started. And it's really important that we get this out of the way, and I think it's fundamental to the ongoing health of this planet. Shin, are you chewing, dude?
I knew it. I knew you were going to ask that. But no, I am not chewing.
Right. Do you have a basketball? Do you have a basketball within her arm's reach?
No object like that.
Do you have chewing gum within arm's reach?
Well, to be honest with you, no.
Oh, to be honest with you. Okay, that's not a flat denial there, is it?
It's conditional, I guess. It depends what happens.
Do you have
but
a
it's
pen?
Not in my reach. It's not in my reach.
Okay. Do you have a pen that has the ability to click very quickly?
No, I quit those.
Right. Cool. Right. Well,
do you have something in your mouth right now?
No, absolutely no. I don't know what to do. I got nothing. I got nothing.
I sense something. Okay. All right.
Like a bat.
Right. Well, two of my.
Oh, the talking clock will go off, Danny G. I'm sorry. I can't shut that off. And is it going to happen? So it'll happen in about 18 minutes. So sorry about that.
Wow. Finished past that stage. That's a good one. I'm past that stage. Nobody going to get me off. What a thing to say. Oh, wow. Isn't it amazing how many great moments that show brings up of just total comedic, just genius? It's just like the reality TV version of The Room, isn't it? And Shin, despite my incessant piss taking, thank you for joining me, my good friend.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's fine.
And Tiffany Lockhart is here. Unfortunately, I couldn't stop her.
Yeah, I'm here.
But thank you for joining us as ever. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
And Amanda James has joined us once again. Lorne's nemesis.
Hello.
I know I say this every week, and I'm going to say this every week, but I really wish you were Amanda James.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if we confused everybody? And in the title, when I did a video one week, in the bracket, special guests, Tiffany Lockhart, Shins Koala, and Amanda James, and everybody will just be going, oh yeah, it's just Amanda James, and then it's like, and just to let you all know, it's the real Amanda James here, so could you tell us where the story began? It'd be like the equivalent of when Princess Diana was interviewed, like all them years ago by Martin Bashir, and it was broadcast like the whole fucking world would be watching, wouldn't it? All the dirt.
I get that. When I comment on just random videos on YouTube, I'll often get someone replying to me asking me if I'm Lawrence Amanda James from To Catch a Predator.
Of course. And some Dale Earnhardt, reference.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Andrew, it's an interesting question. Out of everyone in Lauren's past, is that your number one person you'd like to interview if you could? Amanda James?
Probably not, actually. I'd want to talk to somebody who knew him when he was not his mum, because she won't be objectionable.
In Nashville or Maine? Nashville or Maine?
It'd be Maine, like a brother, probably a sibling that doesn't speak to him anymore, that knew what he was like when he was growing up.
Oh, that's pretty. What about you, Tiffany? I'm curious. Who would you want to speak to? You're just coming off his spell, and he's no longer has a hold on you anymore. So, can you look at this thing objectively? Who would you like to speak to? I'm curious about that.
Well, Amanda James would be amazing, because that's kind of where it all started. But there's another person, Vanessa Ann Lee Parker, that I would love to talk to. That was somebody that he spoke to. I want to say it was after No, it couldn't have been after he was arrested. But she was supposed to come up to visit 7 times. I think she may have had a pet tiger. So I would love to talk to that person and see what the deal was.
Is this Carol Baskin?
I would go.
It could be Carol Baskin. Yeah.
Yes. I would want to go to Nashville. I would eat my interview wish list would be the unknown people. I'd want to either talk to the Mexican neighbors, or I would love to hear from his 2 buddies, his drinking buddies, at the bar. And the other one is his boss at his selling tickets to the Fireman Fund thing. I'd love one of those guys would be great.
Oh, come on, dude. I mean, we'd all if you could pick one though, Shin. Come on, dude. You want to talk to one of them rather than
picking everybody.
The Mexicans for sure. The Mexicans for sure.
Shin's one
the
person
Mexicans
was
because
10.
because they can give me a nice vivid image of exactly what he was doing, during his crime, and how weird they thought he was, and how he wouldn't take him to the dollar store all the time and shit. I would love to talk to those guys. That'll be funny. And always seeing a picture of his niece on his computer, or Kayla as his niece, telling him that would be my wish list, to talk to all those nameless people, Taylor and all those people that in his life. That would be so fun.
Yeah, the people at the karaoke bar. I think that would be amazing.
Oh,
if there was any kind of footage of Lorne at the karaoke bar singing his heart out, I would want to see that.
What do you think the chances are that he ever sung "I Love the First" in a karaoke bar in Nashville?
Probably a good chance. I bet he did.
100%.
Yeah,
Can you imagine? Let's just go there mentally, right? Let's just imagine that somewhere in Nashville, someone has a recording of Lorne singing "I Love the First" on a karaoke the day before he got busted. And that footage exists. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that would be amazing.
He was warmed up for that song. He was working on that. I mean, you don't just come out with that let me just think of something. Okay, here's something. No, he was. Right. He had sung that recently. He had to have. As a matter of fact, I said this before. I think his rendition of that was the best he's ever sounded in all the 12 years we've been following him.
Mm-hmm.
That one time, and he was so proud of himself.
I agree. Isn't that so fitting? And isn't it amazing as well? We're pretty much 10 minutes in, completely unrelated topics, and we're talking about Lorne. We've done it for 10 minutes. We can't help ourselves, can we?
You're the one who did it. You're the one who started it.
I did, actually.
Oh, you did. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, I should fucking think
so.
Well.
I'm surprised nobody mentioned. None of you guys chose to speak to his probation officer or Allie. That's who I would want to talk to.
Really?
I would want. Yeah, I would want.
They probably know who
even
each one of
more
us
than
are.
your namesake. Come on.
Well, of course I would want to talk to her, and I'd want to talk to Paula. She is very interesting to me in her relationship with Lorne. So she might be number one.
And you can't forget
that's
Nikki,
the origin story,
too.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
That's true. Yeah. Although I wouldn't be surprised if the probation officer knew who we all were if he's listening to any of these casts and stuff about Lorne. It'd be great to get him on, wouldn't it? Oh.
Yes,
it would. I want to hear what they thought about all of Lorne's girlfriends while they were monitoring YouTube, and they realized what was going on and tried to tell him, and he just refused to listen. I would really like to talk to them.
So many people. It's like we're trying to piece together some kind of murder, isn't it? And there's like a trail of 10 years of this person sort of drifted through towns, picking off people. It's just somebody who hasn't actually sort of didn't actually commit anything he went to prison for. It was like, as he puts in his lawsuit, a hypothetical crime.
Failed attempter.
That's what makes him so... Because what's funny is, if you got somebody at Lorne's intelligence level, right, he can't really compute what he did because nothing actually happened if you get down to it. It's like, not only did he get busted before he got a chance to do anything, which pissed him off, but there wasn't even a real girl there, and the camera crew. So it was like the fucking Truman Show. It all opened up before he'd even got anywhere, and then he gets banged up for 5 years. It's so funny. And he got one of the harshest sentences of any of the fucking predators that were caught, so...
Yeah, they hated him. They hated him. Oh, yes, he was a star.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy. Anyway, we really are going to have to shut up about Lon. Oh Christ, we'll get back onto that guy next week. So, right. Anyway, what I thought we could cover a little bit, because it's going to hopefully move on to some more interesting discussions, shall we say, is the guy who sort of ended it all, really. If you guys remember, the Murphy was the final sting, wasn't it, Shin? Is that right, dude?
I don't know. Wasn't
no, it wasn't.
Bowling Green, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But
obviously,
I think it was just before.
Yes,
I think it was
Murphy, then Bowling Green. Now, what we can say is pretty for certain is that they didn't do any more of them because of what happened in Murphy. Now, just for anybody who doesn't know, who's in the chat, very briefly, you can see a picture of him scroll through in a minute. That all those pictures are from the from what actually happened in Murphy. The district attorney Lewis Conrad was
assistant district attorney.
Oh, sorry, that's a very important distinction. No, we need to, but it's still a prestigious job. Is that right, dude?
Well, I had it. It wasn't that prestigious. I mean, it was a pain in the ass. Actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, anybody who works for the DA's office who's an attorney who goes to court is an assistant district attorney.
That shows how much little I know about the American sort of judicial system and how it's set up. So
that's just a shorthand version.
Is it fair to say that it's a responsible position, though?
Yeah, and there are some district attorneys who have higher levels of their job. Some are, for instance, chief of the trial division, chief of different divisions, and they have assistant chiefs and things like that. But they're all technically assistant attorney generals. I mean, or it could be attorney general too, but assistant district attorneys.
Right. And
so my guess is somebody who's like this probably had a good position, and he wasn't like doing arraignments and bullshit bond hearings and stuff like that.
And is it fair to say, I mean, I'll just very briefly explain what happened, just in case anybody doesn't know. He was basically caught in the sting. He was talking to an underage, a 13 or 14-year-old boy. It was reasonably graphic, as I understand it. Amanda, you listened to one of the phone calls before, didn't you? Have you got any, as I'm kind of summarising what happened, is there any insights that you gained from the phone calls?
Well, there were 3 phone calls, and they were all pretty short. They were hard to listen to. I mean, any of those calls are hard to listen to, but it was the "How you doing, Stanley" kid that was talking to him.
Matt Chap or whatever his name is. Yeah,
I don't remember his name, but he did not sound like a little kid. I've never heard a 13-year-old talk like that. But Conrad was trying to get him to masturbate, essentially, and tell him all about it. And the kid was trying to ascertain when he would show up to the house. So it was probably like 15 minutes of conversation in total. And he agreed to come over. He agreed to bring condoms and all that stuff. He didn't seem very suspicious, so I don't know why he didn't end up going. But I think, and I could be wrong, but I think his sister, who filed a lawsuit afterwards, like a wrongful death lawsuit or something,
mm-hmm.
she tried to argue that I can't remember how it was worded, but she tried to argue that he was not really preying on a kid. He was doing something like an illegal, like his own kind of sting somehow. He was doing some sort of investigation. Yeah, some bullshit. It was ridiculous. It's stupid. If you listen to the phone calls, that's clearly not what was going on. He was asking the kid all kinds of sexual questions, and he's just your textbook predator. He sounded just like all the other ones.
Well, it's good that you've said that, because you've given us a lot there. In other words, this guy, we in case anybody was any doubt, he was behaving like a predator. He had these phone calls. He was quite clearly, he was a predator, and he was confronted by the police. They knocked on his door, and he shot himself before he was apprehended and died.
Joey has a correction, by the way. Joey said there were 3 stings in 11 months after Murphy. So my guess is, were they probably California and Bowling Green? Joey, I'm assuming. But anyway, right. Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, this was. I think it's fair to say, though, unless anybody can say otherwise, that this particular case is the reason why they didn't carry on much longer than that. That's how it was reported. I think they felt like the show just came to a natural end. I think, don't know whether anybody in the chat can say otherwise. If that hadn't have happened, the show may have continued. We may have got more stings.
Yeah, I mean, the award wasn't. I mean, Joe, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the award was $1 million, wasn't it?
It's never been disclosed, has it? Whenever you read the reports, they always say that it was an undisclosed amount, so we can only speculate. I believe that the video that I watched on YouTube said that she tried for several million.
Yeah, I heard 10 million. She tried for 10 million.
Well, anybody asked for whatever they want, but what they ended up settling for, I thought it was $1 million. And that's, that's a good amount, but, for a wrongful death with earnings and everything he's lost through the years, and, you could probably hold out for more. Chances are the case wasn't. Joey says that the file is sealed for some reason. I don't understand why that would be the case, but my guess is they didn't want to go any further. They'll take the $1 million and just make a point. But the worst part is the after effect of what happened in Murphy, where they unhooked all these guys they caught down there.
Yeah, that was even mentioned in Lorne's lawsuit. Sorry to go back to him, but he used that as a kind of trying to get away from it from on a number of occasions, and maybe some other predators did the same as well.
Yeah, well, and there were some really bad guys down there that they let go.
Yeah,
there was the
pool
that
table
guy.
That
eventually got caught. Pardon me?
The pool table guy.
Yeah, he ended up. I think he's in prison now for something he caught with years later after that. So this guy was a predator that they had to cut loose, and then ended up getting caught with another decoy, and he got put away. And then you had Alan Cherney, who got off. You can imagine that relief. You got the guy with the finger indexer. All those guys, just got a pass because that guy offed himself.
Yeah, I bet they were turned up at his funeral cheering, didn't they? It's like, yeah, what a guy he was. They were fucking.
Well, this kind of goes to the heart of what we wanted to talk about, right? I mean, we're talking about: are we responsible? Are they responsible for people who are alleged to be predators? Let's just leave it at that. Who kill themselves? I mean, should we care? Should we care about that? Right? Yeah, I'm assuming that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it brings up a few.
Is it our fault?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to look at the what was kind of it would lead naturally onto with regard to discussion is the tactics of NBC and what they did, because as far as I am aware, he knew that. That there was a television crew involved. There was even an allegation. Didn't you say, Shin, that you saw that there was some potential that Hansen got involved at some point in attempting to talk to him or something? There was some photograph of him.
Yeah, it was. I think the photograph was used more to prove that he was lying about something. And I think he said he wasn't on the property, and they showed a picture of him on the property. They said he wasn't running the whole thing, which of course he shouldn't be anyway, but they saw that it looked like the sheriff was taking directions from him, but you couldn't tell what their conversation was. There was evidence that, that I guess, I'm assuming this was probably her theory in bringing the case. That it's the surviving sister's theory is that the police didn't follow procedures and allowed the media to lead him around. And that's not the way you do it. But I don't think that's what happened. But it didn't help Chris's case when he said he wasn't on the property. When you got You got a still photograph and some video of him actually on the property.
Does that suggest that? I mean, we're getting into conspiracy theory stuff here, but it could be a bit more simple than that. Could be that could that mean that he was trying to hide something? So that happened. No,
not necessarily. No, not necessarily. I mean, a lot of things are significant in people's minds, and they remember it, and sometimes they don't. They don't. It could be just an inaccurate, but they made a big deal about that.
No, it could be inaccurate. Of course, we can't say for certain, but I would just sort of not getting.
You could be mistaken and not lying.
Yeah, but you'd think. What I would say is, and I am running the risk of getting into proper conspiracy theory territory here, is that if something significant like that happens where the assistant DA shoots himself in the head, something totally unprecedented as far as to catch a predator goes, you'd fucking remember if you were on that property or not. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm just saying that, and the fact that she won the lawsuit and that police were deemed to have acted inappropriately would say that something wasn't right. Now, Joey said that she sued the cops for improper procedure. As I understand it, NBC had to settle as well, so that would have been a separate issue. I'm pretty certain that was the case.
Yeah, you can name all the defendants. Yeah, in a case like that. So, yeah, you don't have to name them separate. You don't have to have separate lawsuits.
Right.
For the same facts and circumstances.
Right. Yeah. So the police and NBC, they will have been deemed to have potentially acted improperly. So I suppose what the point I wanted to discuss with you guys is the effect that the exposure brings. Because let's say, he's in a position of authority to some degree and a certain level of not fame, but, he's known and responsible. Somebody like him has got a lot to lose. And he decided that his life at that point wasn't worth continuing. So I suppose, is it appropriate for them to expose the predators? And it's like what's driven Lorne mad. You know what I mean? It's like all the exposure to catch a predator. Just think how different his life would be now. I mean, what do you guys think?
Well, the first question that comes to mind is, what did he know beforehand when the cop was knocking on his door?
Yeah. Well, he
had to have known something. And so I also don't know what the DA's office has to do with an investigation or being prepared or informed ahead of time when something like this is going to happen. Do you know that, Shin? What did you have any experience in something like this? Were you
for sting
ever
operations?
Notified? Yeah.
So they put together, it depends on the operation, some DAs are involved, some aren't, sometimes there are interagency issues and the DA's on top of that too. But he could have been involved with something totally unrelated. For all we know, he could have been, do we know what his job was in the DA's office? Was he working any particular courts like juvenile or something far away from this thing so he wouldn't get notice?
Right. No idea. I have no idea.
I'm just looking at that now.
It doesn't mean everyone is a prize in the DA's office.
Well, he was in a different county. So, I mean, would the DA's office in a different county be notified?
That's true. Good point.
Right.
Yeah. So even his DA's office wasn't involved in the case, I guess.
Actually, that is true. Because in the interview with the DA, I believe, he said that he wished that they would have gone to him first. They never told him that they were going to his house or anything. I don't know how they would be able to do that or why they would.
No, why should he get special treatment?
That was one of the gripes that he had, though.
Well, also keep in mind here that, there was no warning that this was about to happen.
Right.
I mean, this is one of these incidents that just happened spontaneously. And, we don't know what was going on in this guy's head. It's kind of like reminds me of the warden in Shawshank Redemption, at the end. Mm-hmm. You think he's going to go out and fight, and then he just shoots himself. So you can't really anticipate that. But if you look at the risks, if the overall risks of what you're doing, it's got to be included in that. Mm-hmm. But I think if they had any inkling that he had some propensity to kill himself like this, I could have been it could have been handled differently. But from what I understand, the officers came into the house, they confronted him, and he confronted them with a gun, telling them that he was not going to hurt them, and then shot himself in the head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you can prepare for that.
Well, this was unprecedented too, in the sense that To Catch a Predator, they had never gone to an alleged predator's house before. They just busted the guys who showed up at the Sting house, and there were some guys who didn't make it to the Sting house, but they got pulled over in their car.
Jim Roush.
And went to jail. Yeah,
yes.
But I don't think they sent the police to anybody's house besides this guy, and it's probably because he's a high profile guy, and Dateline really wanted that footage.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into the realms of sort of police conduct here, which we can talk about, but I was kind of more interested in the kind of the whole Dateline sort of aspect of it. Is there any do we know for certain that he was aware that it was a sting operation? Or did we don't,
but here's the thing though. Let's say that they didn't go to his house. Let's say that they called him, they gave him a courtesy professional call, or whatever you want to call it. And they said, why don't you turn yourself in? We got this on you.
Apparently they didn't they? Sorry to interrupt you, dude, but didn't they try that first? When I watched the segment, the police officer said he did try speaking to him first, and he refused to talk to him. Well, I
think when they were already on the property, yeah. I think when the SWAT team was out there and everything. But I think that who's to say he wouldn't have done it then? I mean, is there a more gentle way of doing it so he avoids that? I think this guy was predisposed to do this regardless of how he was told, whether they were SWAT agents or somebody, from a close friend from the VA's office wanted to come in and talk to him and help turn himself in. It could have been anybody. You don't know what's going on in this guy's head. And that's why I don't really give too much stock to the issue about NBC having responsibility for that.
Yeah, I think it very well could have been something that he already had in his mind, that if he ever got caught for something like this, he would just kill himself.
Yeah, and you don't know what else is going on in the guy's life either.
Mm-hmm. And what the police chief was saying was that he started to delete his profiles, and that's the reason why they went to the house.
Yeah,
they didn't want him to continue to destroy
preserve
other evidence. Yeah.
And what if they found out he was talking to some other minor at the same time, and there was a real victim out there?
Well, I think that was the reason. If you think about, because this is what would have happened in England, right? Back then, not sure, but no, definitely. Basically, what would have happened is they would have contacted him via his lawyer and would have arranged for a time for him to come into the police station unless they believed there was an immediate risk of harm to a child. Now, in this case, with what he was doing, there unfortunately is. So they have to move swiftly, don't they? They can't leave anything to chance.
Right.
Especially when you have somebody in that position under the color of law. You got to do something right away. You got to strip their authority, number one. And it's not a cop where you tell them to give their badge and gun, but you got to do something. And then you got to have him stop working on some of these cases he's working on that could potentially fuck him up, fuck up the office. So they got to move real fast, only because he's in that position of authority. And whether it's the optics that they're worried about, or whether it's substantive stuff like cases he's working on that'll end up getting overturned because he had issues. Possibly showing some conflict of interest, whatever's going on, anything a defense attorney could make could give them nightmares. So they want him off the job at the very least.
Yeah. So do we agree that swift action was needed?
Yeah.
Was it needed? Sorry, go on, Amanda.
I was just going to say, I think the only difference here, I think that it would have been handled just like this in any other situation. The only difference was that it was televised. There was a camera crew there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
But and if the exposure or the fear of being exposed was what pushed him over the edge, he would be exposed anyway. Even if NBC wasn't there, that's going to be in local news at least.
Definitely.
That an assistant DA was busted for that. He would have to register as a sex offender. That's part of the punishment of the crime.
Right. It's not just punishment, though. It's not just.
Right. I understand. It's for safety. Right. It's necessary to keep the community safe. So he would have been exposed either way. I mean, I can understand being exposed.
He made himself even more exposed. I mean, more apparent to the public by doing what he did.
Right, but he's not around to care anymore.
So. Right, but it's on the front pages. So, I mean, I'm not actually, if he was looking for low exposure, you would have avoided that. I don't think I think they were in a tough situation. I think that NBC, unless I know of any evidence other than what we already talked about, I don't see how they could be considered what they call approximate cause to what he did. What he did is he committed a crime, and whatever's going on in his head, remorse, fear, detection, all that stuff is what led to that. NBC didn't create that. Right. That was his actions, and NBC is there to tell the story. That's it.
But they had a presence there. They were there to film it, so the camera crew, as we've said, the camera crew were there. So that's put an extra dimension onto it, because he's got to deal with the legal aspects and the fact that if he knew, from the information that we've got, it would seem plausible, even more likely, that he knew that there was some kind of involvement, some kind of TV involvement there. He could have potentially seen cameras. They could have somehow contacted him.
I don't buy that. I think he was more concerned about everyone in his life who was going to know who he really was. Right. I think he was thinking about his family, his friends, his coworkers, everybody. I'm assuming that's what goes through their minds.
Yeah, because I suppose he had more to lose than a lot of your run-of-the-mill John Kennelly type characters who just turn up at McDonald's the day after.
Yeah, there's just no coming back from this. He just, he did this on his own. Whether there was TV cameras out there or not, he would have done this, I think. Somebody who was so knee-deep involved, and God knows what else he was involved with. But the funny thing is, if he didn't commit suicide, and if he was taken in and Chris wasn't there, and they did it quietly, they could have probably, just like they sealed his civil case, I guess, they could have probably treated him a little differently. Maybe not give him the exposure, but he would have still had the same problem of having to explain to his family and friends. And I think that, and given, I'm assuming, well, I can't assume anything, but if he was from a conservative household or highly religious, all of these things is just too much to disclose to anyone who trusted him for all these years. Mm-hmm. I mean, that to me, I think, would get him more than RM on TV. I don't think he's the kind who cares more about that than his own family. I mean, and his friends. Like I said, there's no coming back from that.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. I mean, I just, with such an extreme reaction, I kind of surmised that the reason behind his motivation would have been because of the added element of the TV issue, the exposure. But of course, like you say, he's got a lot to lose. Very well respected, maybe one of the last people you would expect to be doing that kind of thing. And the humiliation and finger pointing would be probably unbearable, wouldn't it?
Well, Raymond Scott just raised a point. He said that, does anybody else know in the chat or who's here that, did he produce child pornography? Or he wanted to? He wanted to, okay.
Yeah, in the phone calls they talked about that. He sent the kid pornography. I don't know if it was child pornography, but he sent him some kind of porn. And they talked about taking pictures together. Right. I think the decoy actually brought it up. I think the conversation was that the decoy liked the pictures he sent. And Louis Conrad said, well, what do you want to do when I come over? And the kid said, well, maybe we can take some pictures of our own. And he said, do you have, okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, he said, do you have a camera? And the decoy answered yes. So they kind of agreed that that's what they would do. So I can see that an attempted production of child pornography charge could be added on.
Well, it makes me wonder what was on his computer. That he was so busy deleting before he killed himself.
It's a good point, and that would never, because of the lawsuit as well, even if there was shitloads of stuff on there, we'd never know about it. So we're talking about, we can theorise, I think it was Raymond in the chat had just said, as far as he's concerned, it's as bad as they get. I understand that, because if you're attempting to produce child pornography, then it's certainly doesn't get much worse than that. But yeah, it's I like the what you said about Lonzo, Raymond. The world is a better place without him. Have any of you guys seen Training Day?
Yeah, that's great. I love that movie.
I haven't.
No, all right. They get a bit where he shoots his Denzel Washington character he shoots his friend in the chest and kills him, and his Proby kind of rookie apprentice, he's just shocked to the core, and he's like, the world is a better off place without him, and that's what Raymond has just alluded to. But it is a good movie, that, isn't it, Shin?
I love that movie. Yeah.
A bit disturbing though, like Denzel's fucking bad.
Well, my favorite scene was the when he was caught, when oh God, what's the name of the actor? Shoot, I can't remember his name.
Ethan Hawke.
When he was in the, say it again.
Ethan Hawke.
Oh, I can't. I didn't really hear. Well, anyway, when he was in the Mexican apartment, and Alonzo set him up, and they realized and they were going to kill him in the bathtub, and they realized that he had saved the gang leader's niece from a rape 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was pretty intense.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it was good. But seeing as our two guests haven't heard of it, there's no point going on about it. But it is a good movie if anybody wants to see a bit of rough justice. And
Ethan Hawke, you're right.
Hawke. And a brilliant performance from Denzel Washington. Great 1 hour 40. Don't watch it with the kids though. Yeah, so I think we can agree that this guy was sinister. He obviously had very shaky, if any, moral ground, I think it's fair to say. So basically this is the way I look at it. The police, from what I can tell, haven't done anything wrong. They needed to act. Is there any need to? You see the guys on the screen now. Is it any need to have all the firearms officers there? I don't know. Maybe not. It's different in your neck of the woods, but it would seem that swift action was needed. They turned up there. He demonstrated he was a risk to children and needed dealing with appropriately and swiftly. He decided to take his own life. That's his decision, and that's too bad as far as I'm concerned. Nobody wishes death on someone, but I'm sorry, but it was his decision, and he decided to take the coward's way out of it. So as far as I'm concerned, unless there was... But obviously, she won the lawsuit. So what I'm trying to get, what is it that went on there that was...
Well, she didn't win. She settled.
But it's as good as a victory, isn't it?
Yeah, no, because sometimes you settle just to get for nuisance value. $1 million isn't a lot for NBC.
Yeah, but they didn't settle with Lorne, did they?
They did not settle with Lorne. Lorne didn't kill himself.
So
that's the last thing they would have wanted to go to trial, I would imagine. Can you imagine what the defense would have done? I mean, you want to blame the police, you want to blame NBC, and let's find out what the decedent did. That might change a few minds, and that's exactly what he didn't want, is publicity like that. So who knows?
Yeah. So I mean, with regard to the, what was it? Is it appropriate? I suppose what I want to get at, NBC tactics of exposure. Nobody ever seemed to question it, but it does have repercussions on people's lives. So one aspect I brought up to you, Shin, when we were talking about it, is you look at somebody like Jeff Stacey, right? He's forever linked to TCAT, probably only because of a bunch of us weirdos who know him very, very well. But he's recently got married. But he could always be recognised from the show. So is that appropriate?
Well, we always have this debate, but first of all, there's no cure for pedophilia. That's the problem. You can be, like in those documentaries that we have there. You can be what they call a virtuous pedophile. Recognize your issues and try to acknowledge it and seek help and make sure you don't offend. You can do that. But as far as I'm concerned, the criminal laws, the statutes need to be changed. There wouldn't be you wouldn't need a sex offender registry and also to name who these guys are for public notice if they were doing good stretches in prison where they should be. So, so the trade-off is, okay, you could spend 30 years in prison or you can get out in 5, but you're going to be known to the community to protect the community. And this is what it's all about. And all of this other stuff that we do is just kind of an offshoot of that. It's kind of like building up on the notoriety that should be there. We have to know who these guys are. So, what was the question?
No, it was if NBC's sort of if the overall, because the idea is that when they started this To Catch a Predator, it was controversial, but these guys getting on TV has the effect of producing kind of people who hesitate to do it, won't they? In the future, it's like a deterrent, and also
it should be, yeah.
Yeah, but it's never going to be 100%. You're always going to get.
But at least we know that one guy is not going to do it again. The one we caught is not going to do it again. He's now known.
John Canelli did.
Well, he might do it again. Yeah.
Well, he might do it again, but he'll be easier to detect.
Yeah, he'll be monitored.
He'll be monitored.
Most of them, at least.
Yeah. But
Lon brought it up when we went to court, and these people won't leave me alone.
You can't live in the dark anymore, Lauren. That's where you were in trouble. When people didn't know what you were doing, that's when you were causing problems. That's when you were committing crimes. These guys can't be in the dark. You can't just, okay, you did your time, go melt into society. You can't do that.
Yeah. It's so funny. I mean, it's supposed to be a deterrent, so it's supposed to deter people from doing it, which would protect more vulnerable people, more children. And also, it's exposing these people so that, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, do you guys think that it's fair if they turn up to the house that their asses are on TV and fuck it, it's their problem?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Definitely.
And that concludes this stream, guys. So thanks for joining us.
All right.
Unanimous.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, dude?
I totally agree. I mean, that the whole point is to highlight who they are and to have them stigmatized in the community so that people avoid them or watch them. That's the whole point. You did this to yourself. You've created a situation where we can't trust you in society, where we need to somehow tag you like a wild animal and follow you. This is your doing. What's the alternative, Andrew? The alternative is, again, let them meld back into society and just do it again, because their crimes happen in secret. They can't have secrets anymore. Their privacy's gone. They waive that. They've lost that privilege. They've lost that right. Because of what they are and what they do, more importantly, what they do. And kind of a distinction between people who have those feelings, where it's that science thing that I sent you about how some scientists believe that it starts in the womb, and to a certain extent you could have this compassion for somebody who didn't ask to be created like this. But there are people who recognize that what they do, what they have is highly inappropriate and dangerous, and they don't want to offend, and that's the most important thing. But beyond that, you've got guys who don't stop themselves, and the other way to look at it, you could also prevent them from hurting themselves if they go over some child and there's a mean father there waiting with a shotgun. But I don't really give a shit about that part. But
yeah.
So what about the people like Jeff Stacey who are trying to move on with their life, and because of To Catch a Predator, it's more and more difficult for them? I mean, it's potential some of them get harassed online. There's look at the Vincent Ambrosia situation. I mean, I was going to do another video, but we might do another stream on that at another point, actually. I'm not going into that too much. But well, what I'm trying to say is
those guys should be rewarded, obviously, if they, with, it's as close to normalcy as possible, obviously. But they can never be. It depends on what the state is. Some states are only for 10 years, 3 years, 5, lifetime, all this other stuff. But if they get married and they become a virtuous pedophile, I think that's possible, where they don't want to offend. Then you gradually ease the restrictions like they do in probation. Okay, you can go back on the internet now. They'll never allow them, if they're on the registry, to be near children. That's for sure. But that's not a punishment.
Yeah.
Ultimately, these guys made the choice to go there, and that choice has lifelong consequences, which should be a deterrent to other people doing this. Just like the crime would have had lifelong consequences on the victim. Mm-hmm. So I think it's quite fair to expose them. And the argument, like I've heard people argue, why is there a sex offender registry, but there isn't a murder registry? And I guess some states do, like some small handful of states do have a murder registry or murderer registry, but it's not as important because sex crimes or sex offenses are driven by compulsion for the most part, whereas murderers, unless it's a serial killer, in which case they're probably, if they're caught, they're going to be locked up for life anyway, so it doesn't matter. But murder isn't often driven by a compulsion like that. And like you said, Shin, the sex offenders have much shorter sentences than murderers.
Absolutely.
So they're going to be back out in society, and there's still this. It's like in that documentary we watched. There's no cure for it. You can't. There's no way to stop the desire. So these guys are always going to have that inside them. They're always going to have that compulsion, which means they always need to be visible.
Yeah.
Right.
To keep the community safe and to keep the kids safe.
Yeah. That's a brilliant point. Brilliant point.
So yeah, I think it's very fair to expose them, and the difference here with the assistant DA, he didn't go to the house. They went to his house. He still committed a crime just by sending the images and trying to solicit sex. That's all a crime. But the other guys who showed up, they went to the house. I mean, imagine they showed up at a stranger's house and then have the nerve to be angry that they're on camera and they're being exposed. That was their decision.
Yeah. That's a really good point. There is something I wanted to just talk about. Just put a bit of a clip on. Hopefully we won't get the stream taken down. There was a video that you very much like, 60 Minutes Australia, don't you, Shane?
Oh, God, I love that.
It is and good. Australian journalism seems to be the most fair and balanced from what I can gather.
Yeah. And the host is really hot.
That guy you can see on screen? No, I don't.
No. The one who does the story. Which one? Okay.
No, but I was just going to put a clip because it goes nicely into what Amanda was saying about these people who have these compulsions and what you were saying before. So I'm just going to play this quick clip.
Dr. James Cantor is a neuroscientist specialising in atypical sexualities. When it comes to pedophilia, he's reached important but uncomfortable conclusions, including why pedophiles are attracted to children in the first place.
All the evidence suggests that pedophilia begins in the womb. A person does not pick it, and despite every kind of treatment that has been attempted over a century, nothing has been shown to be able to change these people from pedophiles into non-pedophiles.
By exploring the brains of convicted pedophiles using MRI scans, Dr. Cantor discovered a dramatic cross-wiring in the connective tissue. His controversial research found that pedophiles are victims of nature.
It's not that these areas of the brain are different in the pedophiles, it's that the network that they're supposed to form isn't connected properly. So it's accidentally identifying things in the environment that should evoke a parental nurturant instinct, but instead it's provoking a sexual and erotic instinct.
From all the science,
Yep.
from all your science, did it answer the question, are pedophiles born or made?
Interestingly, the science in general says that pedophiles appear to be born, not made.
Right. Did you guys hear that? I think you've seen it before anyway, haven't you?
Yeah.
I just think it brings up quite some interesting points about about the sort of because you've got different types, haven't you? These people are born this way, and they're attracted to, they're attracted to these people, but you've got the ones. It's the ones that act upon it that it's the problem, isn't it? Because you've got the people that are born with it. We can theorise as to which one Lorne is or whatever, and then it's the people that act on it. It's like you said, Amanda. They've got this compulsion. Guys, I think there's a link in the description to that full video. I recommend that you watch it. Do it now if you want, but do it after the stream, and it's really interesting because it's very easy to look at these guys and just judge them as being monsters, which is a personal decision for you to make that. But these guys, most of them are born like this. Most of them. But that doesn't excuse the behaviour, does it?
No, it doesn't. I think, when we talk about rape class, when you look at all of the questions or the assignments that they have to work through, none of it has to do with why are you attracted to kids? What do you find attractive? Why, was your sexual offense attractive to you so that you went and committed to it? It has to do with how do you feel about committing that crime, and what are you going to do now? How are you going to stop yourself? One of the most important things that Lorne has to do, all of them have to do whenever they're going through this class, is to come up with a safety plan. And every single time they're in a situation where they could be put in contact with the children, they have to think about, what am I going to do? How am I going to stop this child from being in danger? And typically it has to do with letting someone know. There always has to be someone present who knows exactly who he is and what he did. He doesn't have to walk into a room and announce himself, get on the microphone, but there has to be someone there who knows. So for example, when he has the yard sales at his home, if there's a kid there, he can't go outside. Or he has to have someone else handle them, whether it's his mom or his aunt or something. So he has to constantly have people around him that are going to protect him when he is and protect the kids when he's in those types of situations. So whether he has to go to a public place or anything like that, there always has to be somebody that knows. So, when it comes to labeling somebody as a monster, or if they have something that they were born with and that they have this attraction, just like anyone can say about their sexuality, typically it's something that just happened and you were either born with it or you noticed it at some point.
Tiffany, do you think that you equate the RSO as similar, if not the same, as letting someone know, being forced to let someone know?
No, I don't. I think that RSO in itself is definitely a public service, but that is also something that people have to actively go and look for. They may receive something in the mail if somebody's going to be released and they're moving into the neighborhood. But if somebody's already established and you would have to go and look for yourself to see who was arrested. There's not an announcement.
So you're talking about
made.
Therapists and counselors and people like that.
Well, even
or
for
family
example,
members.
Family members, if somebody were to befriend Lorne or a sex offender at their job, for example, and say they don't know anything about these people at all, and they say, hey, why don't you come over? You're going to come over for a barbecue and you'll meet my wife and kids. Well, at that point, Lorne can't go unless he tells that person who he is and what he did. So it's not even just, well, he can't, because then he'd be violating his probation. And then,
no, I mean, make a bullshit reason not to go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that has a lot to do with Lorne and his social standing, as it has been for a very long time, and that he doesn't have friends, and we can talk about the reasons why that is, but one of the reasons why he has explicitly said, I don't make friends where I work, because then I would have to explain everything. And it's a lot easier for him to communicate with people that already know him on the internet, because they already know his crime. He doesn't have to explain anything to them. They already know. But imagine you being friends with him, and then he has to say, hey, listen, here's the story. Here's what my charge is. You're going to run as far as you can.
I have a close friend a few years ago who she married this dude. Seems like he was great. And then she found out 8 months into the marriage he was RSO. It was devastating, especially when she looked into the charges.
Wow.
He didn't say anything.
I mean,
he didn't say anything.
That's crazy.
They annulled the marriage. But
right.
I mean, we're getting into political grounds here, but there shouldn't be a situation where that even happens, should there?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You shouldn't. That person shouldn't have had to find out that way. It should have been, that information should have been given to her. But like I said. Mm-hmm. We're getting into political grounds. Crank Cinema, the legend, is in the house with us, would you believe?
Right.
And asked, does Lorne really have any real friends? I think we can answer that question quite categorically and say,
right,
no. We're his friends. Ironically, we are probably the closest thing he's got to friends. How fucked up is that? In fact, dude, Shin, me and you have met the motherfucker. Well, we're not met him. Well, I suppose you could say it. He's meeting someone.
And his mother.
But Lorne looked at us. His mother, I don't think, even knew we were there. I can't believe I'm telling that story.
Since you raised that issue, when we were there, going back to the point that Amanda was making about, these guys should have longer sentences. That's the reason why there's an RSO versus murder registry, things like that. There was an argument that was raised by his attorney. I don't know if you remember this, when he's trying to get his lifetime RSO down to 10 years. And he brought up a case where it didn't turn out to be the best analogy, but that what the judge told him was, look, that case is different because I gave that guy 30 years and he only has 10 years. Now, if you'd like me to flip that for you, we can do that. We give you 30 years and we'll take you off a lifetime. But there's a big difference here. I think that's what really stuck out to me. His lawyer's using this case to say he shouldn't be on lifetime because you gave this other guy only 10 years. But what you didn't say was you also gave that guy 30 years incarcerated. And I think he was in his 40s, too, at the time, too, or 50s when that happened. So, obviously, if we put these guys away where they should be, incarcerated, and get rid of these mandatory minimum drug cases and all that bullshit that is clogging up our courts, and put these people on children crimes in their place, we'll still need an RSO for when they get out, but these crimes should be putting these guys away for a long, long time. And then they'll get a short RSO stint after that.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that convicted sex offenders should be mandated to live in places like Pervert Park?
Ooh. Sometimes they have no choice.
I know, but I mean in general, right, some do have no choice, but should that be like a term of their...
Well, just let everybody know what Pervert Park is, in case I'm assuming most people in the chat have not had a chance to check out the videos I posted a link to. There's a place... Where was that place? Was it Florida?
St. Petersburg, I think.
It was, yeah, it was Florida.
There was a place in Florida called Pervert Park, which is amusingly put. Well, I don't think there was a sign outside saying that, but all of the registered sex offenders, some of them committed heinous crimes, were all put in a trailer park and lived next to each other. It would seem like quite an appropriate thing to do. Keep them all in there. You can keep them monitored. They can all live with each other as long as Mary with her 3 kids doesn't live on the park. Then we're all happy.
And the way Florida has it, Amanda, is they have basically every municipality, every city has their own rules about where sexual predators can live in relation to children or where children congregate. And it became a very, very small area. And there's not many places for them to go in Florida. First of all, I don't know if I was one of them, I'd move out of Florida. That's the first thing I would do. Because the alternative to that park, I don't know if you saw this other documentary about these guys who live under this bridge in Miami. It's even worse.
I didn't see that. Okay, so they live there because there's like no other place in town that's far enough away from children.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. I mean, there's always a church on. God knows how many churches there are in Florida. There's always a school ground. There's always where children they can make an argument about any place really. And Florida is very, very strict, and each town has their own rules too. So, there's not many places for these guys to go. And when they have a place like that, a trailer park, compared to the alternative, unless you're saying the alternative is should they be restricted like that? Well, that kind of defeats the RSO.
Yeah, I think we're evolving as we evolve the criminal system and evolve as societies. We're constantly trying to find the best way to deal with criminals. But who was it that said that a society is based on how it treats its criminals? Some guy, maybe Lorne, probably not.
Some dude.
Chris Hansen, maybe. But I think it's a true. We've got to look at it, and the immediate response would be, let's just shoot them all. The problem with that is, as well as committing murder, is that, well, not if they're sentenced to death, but that's a whole fucking other potential stream we could do one day. But these people are never going to go away. As we've already established, it is a physical genetic issue, so people are always going to exist like this, so there needs to be a way of dealing with it, and we're still evolving. We're still trying. The RSO was a landmark sort of event when that happened, and I can't really think of any negatives. There is people that are trying to move on with their lives and they can't, but the people that have offended, that even if they reform, there's always going to be a risk that they're going to reoffend, and I'm sorry, that's just the fucking way it goes, isn't it? You're just going to have to put up with it.
Yeah, it's the kind of stink that never goes away.
Yeah, and we can look at it like I said, in the way that we are doing in a serious manner. We can look at the comical aspects of it. I'm not a fucking sex offender. That's one of my funniest Lorne moments. Because it's like he's a sex offender but hasn't done anything. If you get somebody who's banged up for 5 years for sex offences and he's a virgin. Well, allegedly. Well, actually, we was on about doing a stream on Clobbering Times channel at some point where we all do a debate, the Lorne virgin debate, but I don't know. I think that's been talked about for centuries. But yeah, I think that there's the rape class thing, which obviously we think is funny, but it's a part of treatment and it's a part of trying to rehabilitate these people. These people are going to come into society. How are they dealt with effectively in a humane way? We have to do it as humanely as possible, but also the number one priority, as far as I'm concerned, is always to protect the innocent. That's paramount. And if the only way of doing it is that these guys have a shit existence, that's just the way it's going to go. But you have to balance it, because you can't. Got to allow people within reason the opportunity to reform. Do you guys agree or not?
Yeah, obviously.
There's a bit of hidden sort of resistance to that then, Shin, I could tell.
Well, like, because it's so genetic, it's ingrained. It's can't be fixed. It's a disease.
But the motivation to act upon it can be changed.
Well, the problem is keeping your eye off them is not the way to do it.
Oh no, not for a second.
Yeah, but Tiffany, I'm curious. Knowing how deeply close you were with Lauren, and I, by the way, I hope you're over that now, because I know it took you a long time.
I am.
Well, we still talk about him every day. So
right.
She stopped crying about 3 weeks ago. She stopped crying, I think.
Right.
But do you think that there will ever come a time where they'll loosen up Lauren's restrictions?
No, I don't.
Elaborate on that?
Well, I think it's interesting, first of all, that he's been through this class a couple of times. So now that he was released from prison, he was going to be required to start it again. So he went through it the first time. He was in there for several years. Part of it, he said that he was unable to really participate as far as talking and going through his assignments, because he was going through the appeal process. So he wasn't able to speak. When he was able to speak, he did get to the point where he went through all of the assignments, and there happened to be, I think, either 6 or 8 questions, essay type questions that he has to answer. And so he went through all of that, and then he was required to start the class over again. Now, he says that it happened for a couple of reasons. First, of course, he thinks that probation is busting his balls. But he also says that they wanted to see him in a face-to-face relationship. And he mentions that in one of his letters to the court. And rightfully so, he says, how can you make me be in a relationship? That doesn't make sense. And
that's not what they
you're
said.
Right. That's absolutely right. That's not what they said. It could have been an off-topic conversation they were having with him, some of the things that they're hoping to see from him at some point, but that is not the reason why.
Or we would feel better if we saw her in person. We would feel better.
Sure, yeah. I mean, who knows exactly? Who knows what the real conversation was? The other thing was that he said was that they changed providers. That's an interesting one too, because when you say change providers, that means, that means that everyone would have had to go, right? Mm-hmm. They would have stopped their contract where they were at, and then they moved along to someone else. And I don't believe that was the case. I think they changed providers for him, and they made him go to a different class. And that's where he had to start over. So perhaps they felt that this other provider was going to be more beneficial for him. I know the first class he was with a woman. This class that he was in this last time was with a gentleman. So maybe that's something they were looking at. But he wasn't able to pass the questions. That's the real reason. He didn't pass the class, because when you look at his responses to the questions, especially the ones that say, talk about your crime. Why are you here? He talks about everything else. I was messed up at the time. People used me. I was in a really bad place in my life. I got caught up. I caught this charge. I was talking to who I thought was a 13-year-old girl, but I was in a really bad place at the time. So
why can't he do what he did with them? Why can't he do that?
What do you mean?
Like, you had him broken down, and you had him admitting what his issues were and how he had a problem.
Because he's not trying to sleep with his treatment provider.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, the other thing is too, I don't think that, he's in a class with however many. I imagine there's always, 10 or so in the class, but I have no idea really. It could just be a handful of people. But they're not really going to hammer away at him with these types of questions, because, number one, that's not really their position, and they're not, they're not necessarily interested in doing that. They want him to answer those questions. And when they see that he can't, then they make him start again. So, so as far as him ever having some kind of restrictions that get a little bit looser, I really don't see that happening. Of course, they have to have the most gigantic file on Lorne Armstrong and all of the ways that he fucks up his probation from the very beginning. I mean, because he, to the point where you guys saw him in court, where he was being threatened with probation revocation, that had happened probably about 4 or 5 years. There's 4 or 5 years worth of mess ups that led up to
modifications.
All of the modifications that were signed by Lorne, in the sense that if he really felt like he was not being violated at that time, then he could have had a hearing, he could have had an attorney, but he signed all of that away because he just wanted to sign on the bottom line and then get out of there. So they have, all of the times that they've been doing this, and it really goes to show, especially with Maria's testimony, that they know exactly who they're dealing with here. And the fact that he's going to stand up in front of the judge at the revocation hearing and ask for something less, it blows my mind. It's
it is
so
astonishing.
crazy.
This is why we love Lorne, because you've just summarised very well.
Yeah.
Why is an interesting case study? Because after everything he's been through, there's just this amazing denial to admit the truth, and I find it very, very interesting because it's beyond normal. It's not. It's fantasy-like, which is why he comes across as a bashful cartoon character, because it's beyond. It's cartoon-like in its ridiculousness. It's something that would happen on an episode of The Simpsons, because you'd be like, that wouldn't conceivably be real. I think that's why we find him so funny, and because you said to me, Tiff, once, wouldn't it be funny if we like a camera on him 24 hours a day? We'd constantly be watching it, wouldn't we? What's he up to now?
Yeah, we would be wanting to know, hey, what's Lorne doing? Oh, he's working on his house, and he's with Roy, and they're doing something stupid. You can see how they're making even more of a mess of that place. But I think ultimately, what is that?
Sneaking beers on each other.
Yeah, exactly. But I think ultimately, even with what the judge said, you cannot be a victim of your own crime. Right. They know that is what Lorne is trying to do. He tries to do that all the time. I'm the victim. I'm the victim. I never would have done this if you didn't do that. Mm-hmm. So, and because they know that, I really feel like they would have to see remarkable progress on Lorne's behalf in order for him to actually be successful. And he has talked about how when he gets through the class, Maria, was going to go to the judge and see about getting him off of probation, that the goal of probation is not for him to be on it for the rest of his life, even though that is his sentence. Right. I really don't. I think that's just wishful thinking on his part. I don't think.
No, well, the probation officer throws a carrot out there, I'm sure. I mean, listen, the best way for you to do this is to do this. If this is what you want, do this. And he's making it sound like they want you off probation. That's
exactly what he says.
Yeah.
So, just to kind of bring it all together, no, I don't think he's ever going to have his restrictions dropped, because nothing has changed as far as Lorne is concerned.
And not only that, he's lost his ability to bullshit them now, because they know who he is. they know 10 years with him.
But they've known, they've known who he is this whole time. They just didn't. They just haven't. They didn't make the move that they did, probably because they didn't think that they would have. They wouldn't have been making the biggest impact like they did by sending him to prison for 6 months.
Yeah, so, somebody mentioned in the comments that this case, his case could very well go the same way that D-Mac's case went. With his inability to get progress in rape class.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that, just talking about not progressing with anything. That's the reason why Allie was removed as a counselor for him.
Well, she was his alcohol counselor, wasn't she? Wasn't sex offender cat. It was. I thought she was an alcohol.
Right. No, that is true. But according to him, even though he obviously had a huge crush on her, and that was going to impact on what he said, they were talking about, they were going to talk about not just alcohol in the sense of, okay, Lauren, how much did you drink today? Okay, you told me, now you can leave. I think that what she was trying to do and what the goal with that was to talk about, why are you drinking?
Triggers, yeah.
Yeah, and how can we work through those so that you can then not feel the need to drink when something like that triggers you. So he was definitely talking about things. Of course, I'm sure there were a lot of tears, a lot of I feel sorry for myself and I want you to feel sorry for me too. That's really the angle that Lauren goes for pretty much with everything and everyone. It's really refreshing to see that Probation doesn't buy it, and the judge didn't buy it either.
Oh, give the guy a break. You're always on his back, honestly.
I know.
Jesus.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
But of course, you're right. I mean, it's comical and tragic at the same time, which,
I can't imagine him ever being back on the internet. I can't see where a situation would occur where they would let him do that. I mean, given the problems he's having when he's not supposed to be on the internet, look at all the problems he's having.
Yeah, I have no idea. I know that he had talked about there was a monitor that was supposed to be on his computer, and I believe that it was taken away at one point because he wasn't paying for it. There's a shocker for you. Right. He wasn't paying his bill. So they took it away, but then also there was the fact that he was perhaps using it too much. And he was being on YouTube all the time and all that kind of stuff. So just like with alcohol, he wasn't restricted completely from using alcohol at the beginning, but he used it excessively. And then they could see that his internet usage was probably a problem too. So I think it was a combination of things. He didn't pay his bill and he wasn't being productive on the internet, and he was focusing too much on his YouTube channel and comments and fighting with people and all that kind of stuff. So
it all comes down to rape class. If he can somehow get through that, if he could somehow, bear down and do what they need him to do, it would seem like that would be a really huge start. But going back to the premise of this this video, he's one of these people that again, nature caused him to be who he is, and but he's the exact opposite of a virtuous pedophile, as in those videos. He's somebody who's basically not saying I deny ever doing that. He's saying I am cured now, and it's over, and I'm a different person now.
And that's what's always been interesting and comical as well, is that he just believes that he's magically cured, and with no basis. He lacks any kind of logical reasoning. He can never be trusted on any level ever, because
definitely not.
He can't seem to. He doesn't. It's not that he can't. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to put the pieces together.
He doesn't think there's anything to cure. That's the problem.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So
he thinks there was at one time, and that he did his time, and that did it for him, and now he's seen the error of his ways. No, that's not how it works, bro. You are sick. And you need to work on this.
Well, I mean, Ramona did get him out of a lot of patterns.
He can't name any, but she did.
Can't name any.
You love that phone call, Andrew.
It's that was a phenomenal. I can't describe how amazing that was to listen to for the first time. It was like I'd never heard him in any kind of domestic situation before. So you've got to understand now. There's fucking shitloads of stuff out there, isn't there? To the point where I'm not even. To the point where I'm not even interested in half of it, and most of it, and that's not to have a go at the people involved or have a go at anybody listening to it, because it is entertaining. But the way I look at it is that that Ramona call is as good as it gets. You know what I mean? Like, everything is in there that I wanted to hear. And when you hear him, like, have this conversation with what he believes to be his girlfriend, it was fascinating. Can you imagine if you can pinpoint the first time you ever heard Lorne in a domestic situation, having listened to the phone calls and read his chat log and studied everything about this guy and then listening to him? It was amazing. It was, I can't even put it into words.
What do we get out of that? I was raised by my mom. We've got, I am not a sex offender. I'm just on the sex offender list. And we got, I'm not over my drunk yet. And we got a lot of good things. Oh, the confession about driving with an 18 pack.
Yeah. Ralph and Laurie live so much in the future. I think we got that one as well.
Was his mom. That was his mom.
It was the same call.
I don't do anger
It was the same call though, because she puts him on hold when she puts him on hold.
And he couldn't give any assurances that he wouldn't be physically abusive. My brothers never did that. You know, that was the other one. That's the other thing. I don't hit women. I was raised by my mom.
Yeah, it didn't get. It's like the conversation with his mum that was during that call as well was just so fascinating. Like hearing him, he was drunk, a little bit drunk at the time, but he's pretty much drunk all the time anyway. So it was kind of like that's kind of how he is, you know. But to sort of hear him and hear his patterns that he can't even get out of, that he doesn't know how to get out of, that he does know how to get out of, that somebody else got him out of, that he can't name because he's got memory problems, because he can remember last year but he can't remember yesterday. That's what was.
Remember every day of my childhood.
What parents, Lorne? Oh no! I suppose it's what he doesn't say as well that's really funny if you think about it. It's not the words. It's like, but you weren't going to sleep with the person that was there.
His brain snapped in half.
Exactly. Yeah, his brain broke.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so. I think the reason he's so funny. We can't help it, can we? This fucking stream was supposed to be about all sorts of stuff. And we were going to talk about creep catchers and the vigilante paedophiles. I think we're going to have to do that for a separate conversation because we're running over. So we'll just carry on talking about Lorne for another fucking 10 minutes.
We did a lot of homework for this.
I did as well, yeah. I put loads of fucking pictures together, and what I've done is I've just superimposed the picture of Lorne over them on the screen, which I think is quite telling, really. It's like, oh, fuck that off for this week. Let's just talk about Lorne, shall we? Yeah, but I'm really interested in his psychological makeup. So it's so funny. Because he's a funny character. He's funny because we can't. It's like it is a little bit like The Room. We've spoke a lot about the film The Room, haven't we, Tiff?
Oh yes.
That is funny because it's unbelievable. You're watching that movie. Have you seen it, Amanda?
No, I haven't seen all of it. I've seen parts of it. My daughter loves it. She quotes it all the time.
How old is your daughter?
She's almost 18.
Right. Okay.
Young one, huh?
It's you can't believe it's real. So that's what's funny. You're like, this can't be a real movie. It's just so outlandish and outrageous that it makes it. I still don't believe
Lorne's real. I still can't believe Lorne is real. It's hard.
Well, exactly. That's the whole point. The humor is the same. It's not just you can't believe his nuances and his bizarre utterings and his bizarre. It's like this. The fucking, as I'm saying it now, after all this time, like his chat log and the giving names to people and genitalia and suing NBC for $80 million and the decoy it was using a female powers. It just goes on, doesn't it?
He's amazing. He's amazing. I can't think of any individual who's funnier in this world, professional or unprofessional. Whether they do it for a living or a comedian or whatnot. Nobody makes me laugh more than him, and sometimes about the same thing.
Yeah,
over and over again. It's like you hear the same joke over and over again, and he's so predictable sometimes, and when he's not. He surprises you with some hilarity. I don't know what to make of this guy. I want to love him, but I can't. This gives me so much joy.
He would be a lovable character if he wasn't a child predator. You're not gonna adore a child predator.
That's a wonderful thing.
But yeah, it's quite it's such a strange situation. And like when you're saying about him being such a funny character and coming out with crazy shit, you know, we were kind of witness to it in the courtroom. I know you were trying to put your professional head on and note down everything that was going on, and I just lost my shit because it was such an unexpected thing for him to come out with. I didn't think he was going to go to tell the judge about his cooking show.
I said,
who would have thought that he'd mention that to Judge Woodcock? I just want to do my cooking show.
Again, I've said this a million times, but at his first sentencing hearing back in 2007 or 2008, his allocution or his statement to the court was literally 3 sentences. I mean, if we were there for that, we would have loved it too. But what he gave us was, you know, it was just a showstopper. It was just unbelievable. Oh, is he really going to talk? Is he really going to talk that long? You know, it's like, wow, we are getting our money's worth here.
Yeah, I know. It just seemed to go on and on, didn't it? Yeah, it was. I was. This was gonna. We're bringing up the district attorney and NBC and all that, and this was hopefully going to naturally lead on to talking. Excuse me, about basically the sort of vigilante groups. But I don't think we've got time to talk about it, really. We're going to talk about, like, because people have took it upon themselves to dish out justice. And obviously there's loads of these groups in America and Australia. We've spoke about them, well, America and, why did I say Australia? I think it was because of the 60 Minutes thing, but there's loads of them in the UK. But in the UK, they're on about bringing in new legislation, which means that you're not allowed to do it anymore. So if you're involved in, is the Duffmobile going past, Shin? It's Duffman. Are you ready to party? Duff love.
They're gone. Okay.
Right. Yeah, they're on about bringing in legislation this year, so it's illegal in England.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah, to make it illegal to do that?
Yeah, if you run in one of these groups, creep catchers, whatever you want to call them, in the UK, they're bringing in legislation because what it does is it really creates a problem for law enforcement with regard to resources, and it creates problems in the neighbourhood. We haven't really got time. We can maybe discuss it in more detail another time, but unless it's coordinated professionally, it's considered properly, and people involved are held accountable, it can get quite difficult because you're always going to have people that will abuse that position as well, and that's why vigilantes are kind of seen as you know, questionable characters, shall we say. But
yeah, there's got to. I don't. Have you read the legislation? Does it ban them, or does it just say you can't do certain things?
It's not come into play yet. I can't find too much information on it because I know that there was a case in Manchester where someone got caught only a couple of days ago. My best friend, one of my best mates, he's a great guy. He's a police officer in Manchester, and he was telling me about it. He didn't divulge any personal information, obviously, so about the guy that got caught, but it was live streamed on Facebook anyway. And I was checking it out, and I was like, wow, it's still going on. And he was telling me, like, it causes mayhem for the cops, because what happens is basically the resources are really spread thin in Manchester at the minute because of everything that's going on, and they're underfunded. And then they drop this on the door, and then suddenly, like, 3 detectives and loads of frontline police officers have to be allocated to it. They haven't got the resources at that time, so then other people are having to get put out. That's just one element of it. You've got the people involved. I believe some of them are doing it for the wrong reasons. You know, some people are doing it because they like the attention. They've got fuck all better to do. You know, it's like, I've got a lot of issues with some of that shit. I really, really have. Some of them that are online, they just like throwing the weight around. They really do.
My only concern is they got the right guy. That's my only concern.
Yeah.
And they're not violent.
No, and most of they can't stream it on Facebook and be violent because they'll get done for assault, you know. But yeah, I mean, do you guys have any quick thoughts on those type of groups?
I think a concern is that it's really, really dangerous. There's a guy whose channel is called Anxiety War. I think he's in Michigan.
Oh yeah, he's great. I like him.
Yeah, he is. I like him too, but he's crazy. He gets in the predators' cars. He'll go with them out into like the woods. The woods.
I saw that one. With a big guy too. That guy was huge.
That's scary. He went into a man's house. He pretended to be a 13-year-old girl, and he's like a 6'2", this really tall guy, young guy, like 26 or something, 27. And he went into a blind guy, or legally blind. I don't know if he was entirely blind, but he was visually impaired. He went into his house alone, pretending to be a little girl. And it's crazy. He hasn't gotten like killed yet. And I've seen people say, well, he carries a gun with him. And I know he has guns and like Second Amendment posters and stuff in the background of his videos.
I didn't know that.
I believe so. I mean, yeah, I've seen the guns in his videos, but I've heard that he does carry a weapon with him when he goes. But that really doesn't. He might be able to prevent himself from being killed, but I don't think a jury is going to look with too much sympathy on a guy who killed another guy in self-defense because he provoked, or not necessarily provoked, but he went to confront him. So it's just really dangerous. And the law enforcement in his area doesn't want him doing it at all either because it's so dangerous.
The district attorney did. Well, if the whole thing's on film, it'll make it a little easier to show self-defense. And that's why they film it, to make sure that nobody can make accusations against each other. I like that part. What I don't like... Oh, shit.
Oh, God.
Okay. What I don't like is when they get into a confrontation and they're asking them questions that the guy clearly is not going to answer, but forcing them to answer. And there's one guy in particular, it's one group where these looks like they look like linemen from the NFL doing it, and I can imagine how terrifying it is for them. Not that I give a shit about whether the pedophile's terrified or not, but these guys actually go a little step further than I think should be. That guy with the anxiety wars is totally non-assuming in real life. And he's tall, but he's very, very thin. But it's not like a group of meatheads coming at you. So
I watched a good video on this topic recently. I can't remember the name of the channel, but the video is called "How Not to Catch a Predator." And I don't know if anybody in the chat. I think
check that out.
I've seen that. I've seen that with Amanda.
And they point out all the stupid things that a lot of these, predator catchers or predator hunters.
It would be a good idea if there was these guys had the fortitude to start an organization to set rules for this, that everyone is part of an association of this. So they have some structure and they have some rules, and possibly a better pipeline to get the evidence over to the police and have it more organized. I mean, if they all got different groups together.
That's a really tricky part for getting convictions, I would imagine, is the evidence. A defense attorney could argue that, the evidence has been tampered with or fabricated or whatever, right?
Yeah, well, you can. I mean, as long if it's unedited and it's just straight video, it's hard to say anything's been tampered with. But and
a lot of it comes from the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing to do is for instance, if you were going to set up rules, I would have a dedicated computer for it, and then as soon as you have a bust, have that hard drive given to the police, the entire hard drive, and have that computer only for that purpose, though. So you're not giving away personal information or anything like that, just so that they know that the nothing's been tampered with, the chain of custody is intact, everything's fine. And I think Joey, I think if he's still here, I think that's one of the problems they had in, I think it was Florida. Was it? Who was that guy that that put the shirt over his head and put the hat on top?
Schumacher. David Schumacher.
How can you forget him?
Yeah, I can't remember his name. I remember
Two
him.
words: role-playing chat room, my dude, my good man.
But I think his attorney pushed to get the hard drive, and they wouldn't produce it. So that's why he won his case. So, you know, that's part of the structure. If they organize and they say, okay, this is how we prepare evidence. This is how we organize it. These are the rules when you confront the guy. This is what we want. Get a picture of their plate, get a picture of their face, and then that's it. Walk away.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because a lot of these, what pisses me off about a lot of them is they're just angry knuckle draggers who like, a lot of them, not all, like throwing the weight around. They like to exert their anger on people, and it's just an excuse for them to behave like dicks. It was someone, I think I can't remember who it was in the chat. I think it was, because it was a while ago, the comment, and I was going to refer back to it. I'm just trying to find, was it, I think I've lost who it was, so I apologise. But basically someone said that these guys deserve as harsh a punishment as you could possibly do, inhumane treatment, because they're inhumane themselves. I've always looked at it that this is the way I look at this type of situation and justice, is that you've got to be the bigger person in these situations. So if you say, right, okay, he's abused a child, let's torture him, you know better than the person, you know better than them. You've got to give people the sense of justice that they would deny others. Otherwise, you become, I know it seems like a very cliched kind of thing, but it is true. You turn into that person. You can't fight evil with evil. Otherwise, it carries on. Where does it stop? That's what karma is. You know, karma never ends. It's difficult to do. Listen, if someone was to affect me personally, in like a family member or something, it's virtually very, very difficult to say, oh yeah, give these people justice. So when you're emotionally invested in it, everything's different. But you know, I think that everything's got to be dealt with correctly, and I don't want to sound like a do-gooder, because I think there's too much of that going on in the world now. There's too many people who think they know. Let's not go too political, but think that they know.
Well, on the flip side, the problem's too big, Andrew, for the police. That's the problem. I mean,
but the problem with virtually everything is too big for the police. Drugs, you're never going to get rid of drugs. You're never going to get rid of child predators. It's how can you deal with it as effectively as possible. I'd rather deal with
child predators than drugs, but as far as a criminal justice issue, child predators to me is the same thing as, it should be the equivalent of an aggravated assault, and whatever those, most sentences, at least 15 to 20 years for these guys when they do this. I don't know how they can get out in 2.5 years. I have no idea how they can get out in 6 months or 3 months or probation.
Or not even jail time, some of them.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. They should at least be treated as a first-degree assault. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be, I think at 15, 20 years at the minimum. There should be mandatory minimums for these guys, unlike drug cases that depend on how much weight you had. That's ridiculous. And again, it's a public health issue as far as I'm concerned. But what I'm saying is that there's FBI statistics said there's 600,000 of these guys online at any given moment now, and it's just growing. And if the police don't have the resources for this, what's the alternative? Do nothing? Why don't we use their medium against them? Why don't we use they chose this method? It's just like they chose to contact the child. And it's all their fault. So if there is, I don't want to call them vigilante groups, but if there can be some kind of an organization or some kind of a way of doing that so that the evidence goes directly to the police untainted. Yeah. Otherwise, doing nothing with 600,000 guys and women doing this online, and the police can't do anything until an assault or a rape happens or worse. I think this is the kind of thing that you require prophylactic measures. You got to be proactive on this.
Yeah, no, of course, and it's all about.
And unfortunately, it's what you get. You get these guys, but at the same time, I'm cheering them on.
Yeah, no, there isn't an easy answer to it all. There's pros and cons. More people are getting busted. There was the case, I think it was that video that you mentioned, Amanda, called How Not to Catch a Predator. Didn't someone who was caught in it killed himself, and he was like a father?
I'm not sure. I don't remember that. In one of the videos you sent me about the
Stinson.
pedophile
It was the Stinson
Yeah.
Hunter one, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm getting mixed
Yeah,
up.
he
That's
said
right.
right.
That guy was
He
on
said
bail.
A guy got out, right. He got out on bail and
He was
and
on
hung
bail
himself.
already for another offense.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was already in bail. I mean, if you're talking about that thin older guy that they caught, and he eventually hanged himself, he was already out on bail for something else.
For the same type of incident?
Same type of crime, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, take a look at the documentary. I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to sort of...
What's worse? I mean, having a history of doing this and getting caught, excuse me, God damn it. Have a history of this and getting caught, or doing this without any history and getting caught. Not history in terms of not doing it, but not getting caught in the past. I mean, I think it would be more devastating to, somebody with a total clean record. Come on, guys. Total clean record getting caught, than somebody who's already used to the system and understands it already.
Yeah, it's no, I agree. It's I don't know what's going to happen with these groups, because they're going away in England allegedly, so they've done well to get that legislation passed, but I think it'll carry on. There'll always be people that'll continue it. Some people have been personally affected. I'm sure there was one couple whose daughter, I can't remember the exact details, but his family, a close family member, had been abused. So they made it the mission to bring as many people to justice as possible. How could you argue with that?
Yeah.
It's like really just sort of cause and motivation behind it, It's just I've seen it from others who are not quite as admirable, shall we say. Yeah, guys, we're gonna wrap it up. We've pretty much covered quite a lot of stuff there, actually. So, we've done a good 30 minutes on lawn as well, haven't we?
Yeah, they always do.
Which always seems to happen. So, we can't escape him, can we? I think even if we did a talk on the difference, which is a better car, the diesel or the petrol, I'm pretty sure we'd end up talking about lawn for 20 minutes. And was his Dodge Ram have diesel or petrol? And then we'd start talking about his journey to Bowling Green, and then we've got sidetracked. Let's get back onto topic.
Are we going to go back to the chat log next week?
I think we will do. I think we've deprived people of good lawn content for long enough. It's nice to mix it up a bit and talk about different things. I kind of like these little different topics and stuff. But we love our lawn stuff, don't we? Do you know what I mean? We've got to. Let's not deny it.
That's right.
It's the reason we're all here, isn't it? It's the reason I went to America.
He's a case study. I mean, besides the comedy aspect to it, he's also represents a lot of what we talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course he does. Yeah, he's the poster boy for these guys, isn't he? He's got
Perfect.
a bit of everything in there with regard to his case. His kind of his motives, the chat log, everything that he did, everything that he was involved with is. There's so many interesting points it brings, like his lawsuit, his sentence time, the child pornography, his crazy story, the confrontation, his action. This is all even before any of the catfishing.
The NBC executive in charge of that show must be, once they got a look at him, and this is my star right here. This is my star.
There he is, guys. We've done it. Just imagine a cartoon scenario where they're watching it and then someone brings in a sack of money and he just holds the sack of money up. It's like, we've done it. Happy days.
Well, we're getting into a good part of the chat log anyway. So
yes. Yes, so guys, hopefully you, Amanda and Tiffany will be able to join us and Shin on next week's stream, and we'll go back into the chat log with fresher eyes and more education and reread that chat log, which has been read by everybody in every corner of the globe at some point. So, you know, listen,
if not,
still,
we'll make sure.
People will still be studying Shakespeare in 100, 200 years, so I don't see the difference.
A beautiful piece of literature.
Exactly. There you fucking go. The scribblings of a madman on a mad rampage. But anyway, what is it you said about it, Tiffany? He was let run. He was let to go. Why? He went wild. He was allowed to go wild, or was it? Was that?
We got to see him in the wild. She said.
We got to see him in the wild.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way of putting it, isn't it? Just very briefly, Amanda, because we've talked to you the least, because you've been on here the least. What do you remember sort of reading the chat log for the first time, or did it pop out to you in videos? Did you not like sit down and look at it on screen and go, "What the fuck is this"?
I never read the entire chat log. I listened to other people read it, but I don't think I've ever been through the whole thing.
Wow.
On my own. Baspy and Base Shaman got me through it. To read it is really difficult. You end up having to skip a lot of things because it's just repetitive.
Mm-hmm. And I need to have some commentary with it.
Yeah.
And some like little pauses to rage and be angry or disgusted. Mm-hmm. I've never actually sat down and read it all on my own.
Although when Tiffany did it with Lauren, that was sublime. You know, there's no commentary, but you could just him hearing his voice and having him relive this whole thing was good enough. It was great.
I love the aftermath commentary.
Oh God, yes.
I love those. Tiffany, how much did you guys get through of the chat log? Because I've only heard, maybe I'm just not looking hard enough, but I've only heard, I don't even know. Not even close to halfway.
I'm trying to remember, but I want to say we got up to maybe October 9th or something like that. I know it was around that time. I think there were certain days where we did a couple of days, if they were shorter. So I'm not really sure as far as recordings, what's out there and things like that.
Yeah, that was my question. I don't know exactly what's out there. I'll have to look into it more.
Which was great.
What was that?
You got to MySpace, girl. That was great.
MySpace, I mean, it was a perfect opportunity to bring it up because it was right there. It wasn't just going to be a random question.
How many times did you want to stop and ask him questions or comment when you were reading it with him? I know that part of you was saying, I want to keep going with him so he doesn't stop. But were there so many times that you were just tempted to say, what the fuck is that? What the hell do you mean by that?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, but just like you guys said, it's so repetitive that once you get past the first time where you say, well, what did you mean by that? Or why did you say that? He's going to say it again. So we're not going to ask, the same question again. But really, it's asking him certain things that I was always curious about, like the MySpace situation. And also, hey, Lauren, you really didn't stare at a picture for an hour, right? Because that's fucking stupid.
Oh, what did he say?
Oh, no, he said it wasn't true. But just to hear him say that. And then also about, he was on the phone with a customer and said Kayla as the name instead because he was thinking about his girlfriend. And that wasn't true either. So it was really fun just to point those kinds of things out and just have him say.
Wait a minute, that wasn't true?
No, it wasn't true. It was just some
stupid shit story. Like that in his head? Wow.
Of course.
Oh God, of course. Yeah.
I wouldn't even think of something like that. That's weird.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, a lot of stuff is weird about him, so.
You ain't kidding.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So it looks like we're good to go for next week then, and get definitely back into what more. We've got to be honest. That's what people want. Lawn by the bucketfuls. Let's not kid ourselves. But yeah, guys. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and guys in the chat. Thanks so much. I know it's been a bit different, but thanks for bearing with us. And yeah, we'll we'll catch up with you next week. Thanks to Shin, Tiffany, and Amanda James. And take it easy, guys.